But bar charts are actually more complicated than you'd think. You think they're very simple, and they are sort of, and they're very, very, again, they pretty much always work. And I will talk about some techniques that don't always work. But things get more complicated when you get into slightly more advanced bar charts. So, for example, people like to stack categories in bars, and that's generally a bad idea. And the reason is that there's no more a common baseline. So when you have stacked bars and you're comparing bars or parts of bars within those bars, then the comparison to each other is actually really poor. And it gets even worse when you try to compare within a stack. And so the reason perhaps is that people to do more of a part to whole comparison in that case. And then and that's really just like horrible. It's really, really poor. You're really bad at doing part to whole comparison within a sort of a stacked bar. It's also important to compare things that are close to each other, or ideally adjacent to each other, because otherwise things get much harder to compare. And there's a paper from 2014 that talks about this, which it's called 4 Experiments on the Perception of Bar Charts. It's a great paper. Because what happens is that it's not just the distance between the bars, but also the bars themselves that are in between. If they are not sorted, that's why I keep harping on the sorting. If they are unsorted, then you get all kinds of noise in between those bars. And actually, let me show you this real quick. So if I make a bar chart here, I'm not going to do much of a demo here of Observable, even though I do want to show you how great it is. But I can insert a whole bunch of example charts here. And so here is a bar chart that is sorted. This is the frequency of letters in English texts. And you can see that obviously it's sorted. So E is the most common letter, then there's T and so on. And these are frequencies. So this is like times 100 would be percent here. And it's all good and well. You could say, well, okay, I can compare E to whatever C here. But you might say, well, what if I don't sort? That's what I'm doing here. And now this is what I'm talking about in terms of noise. So if I look at the E here, and I don't know, I shouldn't have picked the C. Let's pick L here. Because the comparison between these two letters here is now complicated by the fact that these bars are in the way that aren't a smooth outline. And so this actually interferes with our ability to compare bars in this case, or values.
I'm sorry, Robert, but I need to ask you this question because a lot of audience is asking that
Sure.
The platform that you were using just before this slide, they want to know which platform it is. That's a very frequent question on the Q&A chat. So
well, that's great. I'm happy that people are asking. so this is Observable. And I'm cutting off the top here. So this is a notebook that is it's an interactive computational notebook that, let me see if I can. I just change this real quick. Sorry. Where's my settings here? Whoops. Now I've turned it off. I didn't want to turn it off. I wanted to just move it a little bit. So here's the top here. So this is, it's called Observable. The URL is, I'm just going to type this in here because we can also do text here. And this is also where you will see I'm doing this. Working anyway, but so this is the URL. It's a computational notebook that uses JavaScript. So that's why you may have noticed this is doing some statistics using something called Arcaro, which is an open source library. The chart you're seeing here is made by something called Observable Plot, which is an open source data visualization library for data analysis. And this is also what you see here is the actual code. So this is sort of declarative, but it calls functions to create these charts. And it's very much based on a grammar of graphics approach to data visualization. I didn't want to make too much noise about Observable as Observable, but I'm happy to to talk about it being great. So yeah, so this is my my employer. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Robert. Please go on with your presentation. Sorry.
All right. And that's also why I have my little Observable logo down here. So this is how you can always find
I've shared the link.
Thanks. There's also the link to I keep saying write-up, but there's this link to materials that are in an Observable notebook that you will see at the end. So you can then go from there and explore more, because you can just play with that. It's everything's interactive. All right, enough of marketing pitch here. Back to bar charts. What was my next point here? Right, and then there's the question of how do we read bar charts? And this is why I keep talking about them being sorted, is because there is, of course, the length comparison, and this is what you would read in a lot of sort of like old-fashioned data visualization books. And a lot of books still talk about this as being the way we read bars as well. You read them by length, obviously, because we encode them by length. But that's not true, or well, it's not the only explanation, because there's also the aspect ratio. There's the overall shape of a chart, and so on. And in fact, there's this paper from 2020 here where they looked at a number of possible ways that we look at bar charts as charts, not as individual bars, but because most people, that's what I was trying to show with, well, even here you can see that. I mean, if you've ever used a histogram, you know that you look not at individual bars, you look at the shape of the whole thing. And that is what we do with a lot of charts. And so this is where they were looking at a number of possible ways that we read charts that are not comparisons of individual marks. So that all being said, bar charts are great. They're very useful. They work for pretty much any data that has the right kind of shape of data, and but we still don't exactly know all the things about them. So there's still ongoing research that looks into how they work and perhaps building better charts